Hello, Mrs. Claus here. It's Christmas Eve. And before I tell you this very, very special story, I just want to thank you from the bottom of my heart for spending time with me over these Christmas weeks. And both Santa and I believe in miracles, Christmas miracles. And our wish for you is that you experience a Christmas miracle, whether it is large or it is teeny tiny. We just want you to know that all you have to do is just open your heart and let yourself recognize it. And with that, this is a very, very special Christmas Eve story. It takes place probably in the mid-70s in Brooklyn, New York. And at that time, Brooklyn was going through transitions. It was kind of rough and ready, as much of New York City was. There was a pastor and his wife, and he had just been assigned to a church in Brooklyn. It was his very, very first assignment as a pastor. Well, he and his wife are very, very excited about this. And they went into Brooklyn to the little church where they had been assigned. And they got there and they were kind of taken aback because, well, really the church was in very, very rough shape, as was much of the neighborhood. There was a lot of work they were going to have to do. But they made the commitment and they told themselves that if they worked hard, they could have their first service on Christmas Eve. And so that's what they did. They spent months trying to get that church ready, painting and scrubbing and replastering walls that had fallen apart, taking apart pews and putting them back together so that they worked. So many things needed to be done in that little church. But the two of them, with the help from some others in the neighborhood who happened to pass by, they were finished on December 18th. They were ahead of schedule. The church was ready for its first service on Christmas Eve. They were so happy about this, and they felt so blessed. Then, on December 19th, there was a terrible, terrible storm, a nor'easter that hit, and it lasted for 2 days, and it dumped so much rain and some snow onto the cities. Well, on the 21st, the pastor went back to see what had happened at his church. And he walked into the church and his heart just sank. Because there, in the front, on the main wall of the vestibule, right behind the podium, the wall and the plaster had come off and had fallen onto the ground. It was a 6 by 8 foot piece. It was awful. And the pastor just looked and he just knew that he would have to cancel the Christmas Eve celebration. And with that, he closed the church and he started to make his way home. And on his way home, he happened to pass a business that was having sort of a, kind of not a yard sale, but, well, a rummage sale of sorts. And he ducked inside. He was looking around and suddenly he spied this incredibly large, what appeared to be a tablecloth, but it was hand crocheted and embroidered, and it was a beautiful white cloth. The stitches were immaculate, and the colors that were on it just popped out. And in the very center of this absolutely exquisite tablecloth was a cross that had been embroidered into it. And the pastor looked at this and he realized, well, this would cover the entire hole behind the lectern. And he grabbed the cloth, he folded it up, and he bought it. And he made his way back to the church. A sense of peace had come over him because he had solved this problem with this beautiful, beautiful tablecloth. Well, as he was walking towards the church, he saw an older woman running across the street trying to catch a bus, and it had started snowing, and she didn't quite make it, and she missed the bus. So the pastor went up to her and said, please come on into my church, and you can stay here. I'll be here for a while. The next bus will be here in 45 minutes. So the woman agreed, and she went and sat in a pew in the back of the church, and she wasn't really paying very much attention to the pastor as he grabbed his ladder and all the things that you would need to hang a tapestry. Well, he got it hung, and it was perfect. It covered the entire hall, and it was just gorgeous. It was as if it was made for the church. And he got off the ladder, and he came down, and he stood back and admired it, and he turned to his side, and he suddenly saw the woman who had been in the pew walking down the aisle towards him. And she looked at him, and she said, Pastor, where did you find that tablecloth? And the pastor told her the story. And she said to him, Pastor, would you please look in the bottom right corner and see if there are initials EBF? The pastor went up to the tablecloth and he looked, and sure enough, those initials were right there, embroidered into the corner. Then he told her, yes. You see, that tablecloth was a tablecloth that she had made 35 years before. There was no other tablecloth like it in the world. She had made it while she was living in Austria, right before the Nazis came and took over during World War II. And when she was living and the Nazis came, she had to leave very, very quickly. Her husband sent her off and promised that in a week he would find her and they would flee together from the country. But unfortunately, she was captured and she was imprisoned, and she never saw her husband or her home again. Well, the pastor heard the story, and he wanted to give her the tablecloth back, and she goes, no, it is beautiful there. It's almost as if it was made for this church and for this moment. Please keep it. I will. And then the pastor offered to give her a ride home across the Verrazano Bridge to her home on the far end of Staten Island. And he took her home and made sure she got into her apartment okay. Well, Christmas Eve was wonderful. The service was wonderful. The neighborhood practically filled the church all the way up. And people would come out of the church at the end, and the pastor and his wife stood by the door, greeting them and thanking them for coming, and looking forward to them coming back and spending a lot of time at the church. The pastor happened to look inside the church, and he saw a man, an older man from the neighborhood that he knew he had seen around, and the man was just transfixed. He was just staring up at the altar and at the tablecloth. The pastor went up to him. The man looked at the pastor and said, Pastor, where did you get that tablecloth? My wife, 35 years ago, made a tablecloth just like that. There cannot possibly be another tablecloth exactly the same in the whole world. And then the man began to tell the pastor his story about how 35 years ago the Nazis came into their town in Austria, and he sent his wife away, telling her that he would find her in a week when he came after her. But unfortunately, he was captured by the Nazis and put in a concentration camp, and he never saw his wife again, nor his home. Well, the pastor looked at him, and he said, Sir, would you like to come for a Christmas Eve ride with me? And little old man didn't have anything else to do, and he agreed. And with that, the pastor took him in his car across the long Verrazano Bridge, all the way to the far side of Staten Island. And they got out of the car. The pastor walked him up the 3 sets of stairs to the 3rd floor of this apartment building where he had left the woman that he had taken on the 21st. He knocked on the door of the apartment of that woman, and the door opened, and well, I'll just let you imagine what happened next. It was truly a Christmas miracle. They're always here around us. You just have to let it happen. And with that, Santa and I wish you all a Merry, Merry Christmas, and to all a good night. Merry Christmas.